Emily Cappiello with the Gourmet Insider, and we're at the Village Cheese Shop. Raven Janoski works at the Village Cheese Shop in Mattituck, Long Island, and she's going to teach us how to build an epic cheese board. So when you want to impress your friends, you're going to take Raven's tips into account. Are you ready, Raven?
I am.
I'm really excited to see what you have for us
Oh my
today.
gosh, I'm so excited.
Let's do it.
Okay. The basics of building a cheese board, it's very simple. You can do it with anything that you have at home. Basically, I like to say 5 cheeses. You need a cow, a goat, a sheep, a blue, and a washed-rind cheese, which is a stinky cheese.
Stinky cheese. Love me a stinky cheese.
Need it. You can use any jam that you have, charcuterie, which is just any kind of cured meats. Any selection would really work. And basically, the most important part of building a cheese board is making it look beautiful. So what I'm going to start with is a fan favorite of everybody who comes to the Village Cheese Shop, aged Gouda from the Netherlands.
Oh, that sounds
So I
delicious
have some
already.
pre-cut. The first one I'd like to show you is Beemster. This is aged 26 months. It is from the Netherlands. It has these wonderful crunchy parts inside the cheese. Most people think it's salt. It's actually the amino acids through the aging process group together and form protein crystals. So there's a beautiful crunch, butterscotchy flavor, nice and salty. So the next cheese I have is also an aged Gouda. This is my personal favorite. This one's aged a year. It's a very nutty, sweet cheese. This one's called Prima Donna. And I wanted to show you the best way to cut an aged Gouda.
Oh, I love how beautifully this lays in place like this. You just cut around the rind.
Mm-hmm. So you cut around the rind and you can make it kind of cascade out into a triangular form, which will give the cheese platter some movement. And these aged Goudas are really temperamental. As you can see, the waxed rind kind of pulls away. So you have to kind of work with what you've got. So you cut around the rind, like so.
Make sure you have a really good chef's knife.
Yes. And then very carefully cut in little pieces. All right, so then you have, with this kind of ugly looking rind here, you kind of trim it off, make it look as aesthetically pleasing as possible. And with the Beemster, because it is so aged, you just can break it apart with your fingers.
That's my favorite thing.
Yep.
And it's so quick and easy. So like your
Very.
friends are all waiting outside and they've got their wine and you're like, hold on, let me just put this together.
Exactly.
You don't even have to worry about it. And it looks so artsy.
So now I'm just going to find a good home for this on our cheese board. Usually anything with a border, you're going to want to put towards the outside of the board. It's going to give it a little fence.
That's a really good starting off point. Sometimes I don't know where to start with my cheese board and I build from the center and work my way out. Then I kind of realized that was a mistake.
Yeah, I would always work from the outside in and start with all of your cheeses first before adding any garnish.
So now that we've built our corner, what do we have now?
So now what I like to do is going to add some fluid motion to the center of the board. This is a really fabulous cheddar from Vermont. It's wrapped in wax on the outside, which maintains a lot of the moisture on the inside of the cheese. Cheddars are very typical of drying out and getting kind of crunchy, which is not exactly the flavor you want to go for. This one is from Crowley Creamery. It's called Muffaletta, so it's styled after the sandwich called Muffaletta.
Yep.
So it's got peppers and olives and a whole bunch of stuff in there. Wow. And I have pre-cut some. I personally like just going right down and keeping the wax on the cheese because it gives it some nice color.
Yep.
And you want to also work with the color wheel. So orange and blue are on opposite sides of the color wheel, so they work really nicely together. So this is a dark purple, kind of bluish in color. So if you make it go over towards the orange cheese, it adds a little bit of a dramatic aspect.
So now when you eat this, do you want to eat this rind on or rind off?
Anything that's wax, I would eat rind off.
Okay.
For the sake of the cheese board, keep it on because it looks really pretty.
And just tell your friends not to bust their teeth on it.
Exactly. So here we have 2 cow's milk cheeses. So I wanted to go for a goat's milk next. So I have 2 goat's milk cheeses that I'd like to talk about. This is Humboldt Fog. This is from California. It is a lovely bloomy rind cheese, which basically means on the outside, it's covered in this white mold.
Yep.
It's completely edible. You'll see this in a brie style, but also you can do it in a goat. So the outside is this lovely fudgy sort of texture.
Oh, yeah.
And then inside is nice and crumbly, which is very typical of a goat's milk cheese. Through the center here, you can see this blue line running through. That's basically vegetable vine ash. Doesn't have any flavor to it, but they've modeled the cheese after the California skyline to look like water. Which is really interesting.
Oh, that's really interesting. All right.
So this is from Cappiello Farms. They have a very small farm with a whole bunch of goats, and this is a goat's milk cheese with cranberry. It is incredible. It might be one of my favorite cheeses we have.
That looks incredible.
It's amazing.
Actually.
This would go great with white wine, I would say. Pairing wise, rule of thumb, if you have a light cheese, use a white wine. If you have a heavy cheese, use a red wine.
And so when do you use rosé?
Rosé goes both ways.
Rosé all day.
Rosé all day, both ways. This is a great cheese. Honestly, you could use rosé or white wine for this because it's got the cranberry sweet punch, which would be great with rosé.
Yep.
Or a dry white wine.
Yep, great.
So, something as beautiful as the Humboldt Fog, I like to keep it full. You don't have to make it look any certain way on the cheese board, just because it already has a lot going for it. So again, this is a nice strong border, so I'm gonna put this here. People can take spoons or knives, just scoop it out. So with the Cappiello, because it's a very, very soft cheese, you really need to use a wire. If you don't have a wire at home, you can use an aerated knife or whatever you have. But I find that with the wire, it doesn't get too caught up on the cheese. And look at that,
Oh, yeah.
all that beautiful cranberry.
You can actually slice it like that. Oh my goodness, the
You
cranberries.
can see
They're huge.
They're amazing. They're amazing. And because it's so soft, it's just gonna kind of be a little centerpiece. The next one I'm gonna do is called Secret de Compostelle. It's from the Basque region between France and Spain. So from that region, a lot of really unique cheeses and foods come into play. So this one's sheep's milk. It's semi-firm, it's nutty, it's creamy, it's mild, but it's not at all boring, which is a really good distinction to make.
That's great.
So this one, because it can stand up pretty well, I'm just gonna cut the rinds off. The rinds on this one are edible, but they can tend to be kind of pungent. And a lot of people aren't gonna like that. So I'm just gonna cut those off and cut into nice little triangles.
Oh, that cheese is shaped beautifully already. Like you don't even need to do
is.
anything for that.
Nope, it's perfect.
That's
I
great.
love cutting cheeses like this. Just have to be careful not to fracture it.
Do you have a specific technique that you use when you cut, or you're just like, no, just get a really good sharp knife?
Sharp knife. This one is a Mercer. You can get it on Amazon for $15.
Wow.
And it's a beginner chef's knife, but it works really perfectly. As long as you have a good sharp utensil to use, you really aren't gonna come into any issues. Usually when I start making a cheese board, I rearrange it 100 times because I'm a perfectionist.
It's like an artist with a painting though, right? Like you need it to
Absolutely.
look
a certain way.
exactly.
Yep.
I get it.
And if it doesn't look just the way you want it, you can just redo it.
Oh, how great is that?
Yeah, so you've got like a little cheese star going on. And you can kind of layer it underneath cheeses, put stuff on top. It's really whatever works.
Yeah, layering is a big thing with cheese boards, right?
Yes.
Because you want to give it some dimension.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you want to put down like all the sturdy stuff first that you can kind of move around, and everything else you can kind of just drape in between.
Yep.
So this one is from Italy. It is called Pecorino al Tartufo. So this is another sheep's milk. So you could do this in lieu of the Secret de Compostelle, in addition to, but it's another way that you can use a cheese with a nice sharp border and make it look a little bit interesting. You can do opposing triangles, like so. And it's great for people to just come in, grab a little one, and it looks really cute. Last two final cheeses here. Definitely gonna round it out. You can put them both on, you could put on one or the other. So this is a really, really lovely cheese. You can really see how springy and bouncy it is. And if you let this out to room temperature, which you should for all of your cheeses before you serve the board, half an hour. It allows all the flavors to ripen. So this one you can see has been sitting out to room temperature for a little while. And all of this is starting to ooze because it's a washed-rind cheese. So this one's called Oma. It is made by the Von Trapp family from The Sound of Music.
From Vermont?
Yes,
Yes.
from Vermont. So Jasper Hill Creamery. They do amazing cheeses. This one has a really pungent, stinky rind. It's been washed in a local beer, which allows it to get kind of sticky on the outside, but the flavor is amazing. The inner paste can be kind of mild depending on where it is in the ripeness, but this one's a little bit extra ripe, so it's gonna be a little bit more pungent.
Perfect.
So this I'm just gonna cut in half because it's a little big. how oozy that piece looks. I'm just gonna maybe put that over there. So last but not least, I have Bath Blue, which is a really amazing, my personal favorite, amazing cheese from England. You can see it kind of looks like a Stilton, and a lot of people mistake it for a Stilton. It's similar in flavor, but it's more lactic, it's more creamy, it's not as sharp, but you can kind of tell the difference because it has this little yellowy tone around the outside. It is made in the Stilton style, so you can kind of see there are these little holes in the side of the cheese. Basically what they do is they take a long needle and they skewer the cheese, and that's what allows the blue mold to develop on the inside. So someone with celiac might not want to have a blue cheese because it started on a bread mold. Mostly there's no gluten left in the cheese, but some people might want to stay away from it. I'll try the aerated knife first, and boom, nice little triangle.
Look at that.
So find some room for this guy.
And it doesn't crumble like a regular blue cheese does. Like,
no,
yeah.
That's like the lovely part about the Bath Blue. And because it's been sitting out for a little bit, it's not going to be super cold, and it's just going to stay together a lot
looks like
better.
That looks like melt in your mouth delicious.
It's so good. It's so good.
So now that we've laid in our cheeses, what do we have to garnish it with?
We have a lot of different things that we can go with. Kind of depends on what flavor you want to go. I like to do sweet and salty and savory all at the same time.
Okay.
Because they bounce off of the different cheeses in different ways.
Yep.
You could do crackers, anything that you have. Roasted tomatoes. I have some sweet supersad, bresaola. I have dried fruits, and everybody's favorite Marcona almonds, which is a fried salted almond.
I was gonna say a little bit of salt. They're perfect.
Yeah. First thing I'm gonna do is probably start layering in some meats.
Great.
I'm gonna start with the bresaola because I can make these into like little rolls or little flowers. So for anybody who doesn't know, this is an air-dried beef from Uruguay. The reason that I picked bresaola and the sweet supersad is because it really does pair with any different kind of cheese. It's not that it's a bland flavor, but it can work with really anything that you're giving it, and you have the difference between a beef and a pork to put on your board. So the bresaola, 2 ways that I like to fold it. You could go in half and then a half again, and you make like this nice little flower, and you can kind of stick it in between your cheeses.
Oh yeah, and it just stays really well.
It just stays well. Or another way that you could do is you could do like a little cigar, like a little meat cigar. You start to roll, and just like that. And you can use that, and you could put it on the side. Or you could do a combination of each, and it would really look like a flower. All right, so the next one is the sweet supersad. The best thing for this is if you only have a little, you can make it spread out so it looks like it's a lot.
Right.
So this, because I have limited space here, I'm just gonna push it up against the side. And you can kind of put this underneath some of the cheeses so it stays down, and again gives it a little bit more depth. I also have a few of these old plastic ramekins. You can use whatever you have. I'm gonna see if I can fit one in the center because everybody loves roasted tomatoes. So these are just some roasted tomatoes. They are amazing. They've been marinated in olive oil and herbs, and we do sell them here. So we've been working with a lot of savory here. We do have some of these really lovely brewer's crackers, which is an everything seasoning. And I can just kind of put that in the center. Doesn't need to be a lot, just give it a little bit more texture. So that's something that's also important. So I have here some dried apricots. I have dates, which these are pitted, so you do have to take out the pits. I have prunes, which you might think are only good for old ladies, but they're not. There are specific ways that I like to cut dried fruit as well. For figs, you kind of have to smash them into perfect little ovals. And like so. And then you get these little tiny figgy.
Oh yeah.
You can kind of spread it out if you want more surface area. So this is another important thing to note. Fig is one of those very specific flavors that goes well with blue cheese and with goat cheese. So because I kind of put my blue and goat over in this section, I'm gonna layer the figs over here because I want my guests to know that they should be eating these two together. All right, and speaking of fig jam, I have a little baby. This is my little tiny baby. It's Dalmatia brand. It's one of our best-selling things. It's
Yeah.
single serving, so it's perfect for a really small cheese board.
And you're just gonna put the jar right on
I'm
there.
gonna put the jar right on there. And
Yep.
again, that's orange. The Beamster's orange. I like them on opposite ends of the board so they complement each other. So we've got some of these dried apricots. Just gonna layer them together and do a little slicey slice. These I find go really well with a washed-rind cheese. So I'm gonna put them next to my Oma. Just kind of layer them in. And again, it's on the opposite side of the Beamster, so that orange works really well. Alrighty, so these prunes will go kind of layered in, and you can put them on whole. Sliced, they look exactly the same as they do whole. And finally for the dates, these you are gonna wanna take out the pit. So just slice them in half. There's the pit on the inside.
It's like an avocado.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so these dates I'm gonna put next to the Beamster and around the cheddar here. And the last thing is I have a little bit of empty space over here. So it's time for everybody's favorites, the Marcon almonds. The best part of any cheese board. So this I put a lot because people love Marcon almonds.
Yeah, they just kind of grab them and go and
Yep.
sip, and they've got their cheese, and their
Exactly.
cracker.
You can even like push them in between the layers of the cheese, give it a little bit more depth. Kind of looks kind of cute in there. That's
There
a cheese
we have.
board.
We have an absolutely ridiculous cheese board. It looks delicious, it smells delicious. I can't wait to get my hands on it. Thank you so much for showing us
Thank
how to
you
make
so
this
much
and
for
talking
letting
us
me.
through the whole process. It looks amazing. Are we ready to eat?
Yes.
Let's eat.
I'm starving.
All right, let's do it.